Okay, in this video, I'm going to share with you why I am not setting goals for the new year and why it might be a good idea that you shouldn't set goals either. The reason I'm doing this is because year on year on year, I have this period between December and January where I'll think about what I want and then I'll put down what I want to achieve the next year, and then I'll break that down into months, right? And what this does is, for one thing, it creates a line in the sand to sort of start again, which sounds good, and it's very much correlated to New Year's promises and things like this. But it's also not good in the sense that it can stop a lot of progress that has been occurring up to that point. It's also, for me, a time where I might doubt what I've been doing, where actually what I needed to do was maintain some consistency. It's also, it can be a procrastination exercise. It can be a feel-good exercise. There's a lot of reasons, but I want to touch on the real deep reasons here, where I think if you pay attention to this, it could potentially make your year like 10x what it would be if you planned it and used goal setting as the usual framework for productivity. It could 10x what you get out of next year. It could also drastically reduce your frustration, help you go faster, basically have a lot more fun as well. So that's what I'm aiming for. I've kind of done this before, and I've kind of been doing this throughout this year as well. It's just, I have goals, of course, but instead of this ferocious to-do list and this reverse engineering goals into days and from days into hours, I've really been a lot more flexible, and it's really paid off. So let's get into it. During the downtime, you might set very lofty goals. So as I said, that's what I would do. I would kind of have this great feeling about starting the year, and I would set lofty goals because you are kind of in a vacuum, you're in a bubble temporarily, and then you go back into the office, back into the work environment, and suddenly those lofty goals look like they're probably not going to be achievable, right? And the timelines that you've put can be very unrealistic. Nevertheless, this is what most people will do. This is what I usually do. But then what happens? You start the new year and you face the same blockages. So, for example, you might have the intention of you're going to delegate more and maybe systemize more to get more off your plate. And then you get into the work environment and there's a stack of stuff to do, and you never get around to delegating. You never get around to thinking about delegating, and then you never get around to actually building processes that you can hand off to a team. Or the idea of hiring a team is just something that's easy to put off because obviously you've got a lot of work to do and there's like shifting priorities, and you think, okay, while I was off and I set these lofty goals, and my number one goal was like focus on one thing, which is delegation, pretty quickly, if you're a human, you would have found that that priority list would have rearranged itself. And the thing which should have been taking priority was no longer taking priority. You can't focus on multiple things at once. The priority list has to resolve itself. It has to sort itself out. And inevitably, we'll get drawn back into the same blockages, be those being reactive, right? Putting out fires. We might just find an internal blockage. Like, there's a reason you haven't delegated before, to go with that example. You haven't got to the root cause of that reason yet. And so, of course, you're going to find it really difficult to delegate. Maybe you have difficulty with trust. Maybe you have difficulty just staying still long enough to think about what it is you're actually going to delegate and be able to write down these tasks and then hand those off and then put some like quality control checks in place and all the stuff that comes with like delegating effectively, right? The more you want to achieve, the more you're going to run into the same blockages, of course. And so you're going to feel frustrated because you're going to hit the ground running, and everyone's going to use this kind of terminology with you. Hit the ground running, make it a good year, start strong, New Year's resolutions, blah, blah, blah. We know how that goes. We know how the gym membership usually goes. So you're going to feel frustrated. You'll make excuses. You probably beat yourself up because deep down you know that it's your fault, right? I certainly always feel frustrated. I hate nothing more than having to take what I plan to do in January and copy and paste that over to February. Nobody likes that. And you just feel lousy about yourself. You feel undisciplined. You feel you're watching motivational videos. You're seeing people get ahead of you in theory. And you say, why can't I do this? As I said, I feel like the journey could be a lot smoother. It could be a lot more fun. It could be a lot quicker. So I like contrarian advice because it's usually right. Slow down to speed up. That is how I propose to set the scene for what comes next. A way to deal with not having to experience frustration, a way to not have to have the same blockages, and a way to use the downtime a little bit more effectively, and to set goals which are realistic, and then actually be able to achieve those goals fairly effortlessly. So I think you should be contrarian. There's a lot of aggressive energy and advice out there, right? So most coaches, consultants, mentors, YouTube content creators, and people who post on LinkedIn are going to offer very aggressive energy and advice. Okay, we already talked about what that sounds like, and you know verbatim what that sounds like because we're exposed to it every day. I would say no more of that. That is not going to get you to move forward. It's just not. Take it from someone who's dabbled in this for years and years and years. Instead, we need something that will help you to evaporate your barriers. Okay, so just have them disappear completely versus like careering through walls, all of that very aggressive energy, very aggressive advice, running through walls or trying to climb over walls. What about an easier path? What about just like going around the wall? Or maybe the wall doesn't exist. Maybe the wall is just a figment of your imagination. Hopefully this is something you can be comfortable with. I'll tell you one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, and CEOs, anyone in business basically, is that things should be difficult and should not be easy. And that's something which has been wired into us from an early age, right? So you kind of see where I'm going with this. I've spoken about deep stuff. I spoke about inner stuff a little bit. I've spoken about being contrarian. How do we take the alternative path? How do we just evaporate these barriers? So we avoid the same obstacles forever, right? So you're never going to have these obstacles ever again if you work on these things. And so what I propose is this. Okay, let's start with this quick thought experiment here. Okay, so let's say everything came easy to you. All right, so you were doing the work that you loved, having the impact you desired, and everything was just coming good, right? Life is amazing. Life is exactly as you dream. You get to take vacations, you get to treat and spoil family, friends, buy whatever you want. Most of all, I guess, you're going to enjoy the fact that you're having an impact, right? And you're seeing people's lives changed even just a little bit by what it is that you do in your business. Life feels good, right? Would you still engage shouty, aggressive growth advice? Would you do that? Probably not. Maybe you start giving it. Maybe you get a new confident streak and you'll start giving this shouty, aggressive growth advice. Well, chances are you wouldn't, because this is not going to get you here to where everything is easy, life is good, work is loved and aligned, and you have the impact you desire. You're probably not going to get to that place because of shouty, aggressive growth advice, right? So no, that adrenaline-fueled approach can only take you so far. It's not going to take you here. It's just going to take you to a place where you just feel exhausted and demoralized. It's things like, well, everyone else can do this thing. Why can't I do this thing? What a loser I am that I can't do it. Instead, you would have an aligned business that's truly fulfilling. It's easy. Okay, so if you stick with this thought experiment, everything is easy for you, right? You would not look at the aggressive growth advice. No, because you've got a business already that's aligned and it's easy. So I want to ask you then, why do we force ourselves to listen to that aggressive advice? Why do we force ourselves to create these lofty, high pressure goals instead of figuring out what's going to help us to create the ideal business for us, where aggression and boundless energy is at least less necessary. So instead of putting these goals on, this is what my business should look like, this is what happiness should look like, this is what I want to do by mid-January, this is what I want to do by the end of January, I need to hit this revenue number by February, or this is my Q1 target. Instead of setting those and feeling really good about those and feeling really motivated and then relying on this aggression and this energy, right? Maybe there's another way of doing this to create this situation. All right, doing the work you loved, having the impact you desired, everything is coming good, life is amazing. And not needing this, and not needing to call on your energy reserves again and again and again. So how do we do it? How do we create a business like that and not need this stuff? Okay, and not need to set lofty goals. And I would suggest it's a focus on inner work. Okay, the deep inner work. Again, if you can't delegate, you're not going to delegate. There's something blocking you, right? It's a realistic blockage, which means that if delegation is key to your success in the coming year, in order to free you, in order to do more things, and I just use delegation as an example, you can fill in whatever it is for you, and there's a block, the chances are it's an inner block, okay? It's not just a business block. Notice I say it's not just a business block. It usually is a business block as well. If you set goals, all you're doing is creating more busyness for yourself. Okay, the goal setting itself and the fact that now you have a load of stuff to do and now you have to deploy frantic energy, and you're going to be putting pressure on yourself, okay, which is going to distract you from doing any kind of meaningful inner work. Okay, goal setting by its nature is putting stuff on your plate and it's putting pressure on you to go get stuff done. My suggestion is, in order to overcome the blockages which we're inevitably going to face as we go into our new year, we have to focus on inner work. So we must not set lofty goals. We must not set these targets, because what will happen is you will simply get into busy mode. So you'll hit January, you'll be busy. You'll have pressure, which will distract you from any desire to do any kind of inner work. So again, the temptation at this time of year, like the end of one year into the next, is to plan and then unleash furious energy. But if you're blocked, you're just going to take your vacation time, you're going to be trying to build your energy so you can hit the ground running in January. And then you're just going to chuck that energy at the wall. And this doesn't have to just be January from December. This could be any time, you take a summer vacation or something like that, or you take a break, or you go on a retreat, whatever it is. You just take that vacation time, you build your energy, and then you chuck it at that wall. Again, very aggressive, trying to demolish the wall, trying to run through the wall and all this stuff. As opposed to doing the work that will make the wall vanish and the journey easier. And again, notice I said earlier, some people really struggle with this. And that's the job of the inner work. Okay, why does it have to be difficult? Who told me that making money had to be hard? Who told me I had to work very hard to get what I have? Why do I feel guilty if I don't have to work hard? This is the inner work, right? As I'm talking to you, as you're hearing my words, think about the reaction that you're having to some of these things. What's the automatic mechanical reaction that you have if I say that your walls could be vanished and the journey should be easier? If everyone is telling you to use this aggressive energy and everyone's putting out motivational content, that's essentially telling everybody that the only way to grow is if you have boundless energy and the ability to run through walls. This advice that's contrarian is saying, actually, you can make that wall vanish. Now, the true work, the real work, the time-consuming work, the difficult work, believe me, is the inner work. It's not frantic energy, building stuff, building systems, making calls, prospecting, advertising, marketing, hiring a team, blah, blah, blah. That's relatively easy versus the inner work, believe me. So, for me, leverage is in the inner work. If you want to be able to say to somebody, I made, $10 million or whatever, or I sold my company, and you want to feel good about that and you want to justify what you did, let it be not for the fact that you worked harder than everybody else, because You can look at the example of, say, Warren Buffett, who would make more from his holding in Coca-Cola by making one phone call than if he spent every waking minute doing work, right? And he'd earn a fraction of that. You get the idea. Look for what the leverage is. If you want to build a huge business, look at, well, this is what I did. I had to work on myself. Okay. This is true for all of us. Nobody, unless you are a machine, nobody escapes this. We've all been through life. We've all been through battle scars, right? From being a kid onwards, we picked up all these barnacles as we go through life. And the problem is that we just push that into our business. If we can't delegate, again, to go back to that example, we have a business where everybody relies on us. We have a business where we don't trust our team. We have a business where we always have to be switched on and ready because at any minute something's going to catch fire and we're going to have to deal with it, right? That's all because of you, because you can't delegate. So where's the leverage? It's not just in the ability to be able to go and hire a team or read a manual or give them a manual. The leverage is in the inner work. Like, why can I not delegate? Because if I build great systems, or even if I gave you systems and said, here is a plug and play system, your team can operate your business, you can take a vacation, you wouldn't be able to, because of the reasons you have of why you're so unable to delegate, right? So I've made my point. This is where the leverage is. And so it's inner work plus mechanical steps to identify and overcome blockages is the best possible strategy. Okay, so it's a little bit of mechanical stuff, but it's mostly the inner work stuff. So it's always inner stuff plus external manifestations of the same. So in other words, if I'm working on the delegation thing, I have to just not only be like, why can I not delegate? And kind of going deep with that and trying to understand that. It's it's putting it out into the real world at the same time. So it's putting yourself kind of in the pain a little bit of actually overcoming that inability. So maybe it is getting on Upwork and making your first hire, just getting that person onto your team and going through the discomfort of that. It's maybe looking at something that you do repeatedly every single day or every single week and writing down the steps that you follow and then giving that to somebody else and going through the pain and the discomfort of having that person do that. And really sitting with that and trying to understand, where does that come from? Like, why do I feel the need to control everything? What is that desire there to serve? How is it serving me? How does the desire to control everything serve me? Why is it there? And as you peel back the layers, you might realize it's there because you had a very unstable childhood, or because this catastrophic event happened to you when you weren't in control, right? This is what I mean by the inner work. We obviously can't get into the exact steps of the inner work right now, but this video is just to sell you on the fact that do the inner work. Don't blindly go set a load of goals again. So inner work plus inner stuff is always inner stuff plus external manifestations of the same. Okay. Here's an example of where you don't tackle the inner work. So if you feel an imposter in your space, you may not bid for that contract, or you might not push ahead above the parapet with advertising, right? You might not want to draw attention to the fact that you're operating in the space that you're in by running advertising. You might unknowingly sabotage a deal or not even approach that prospect. I've spoken to people throughout the past year who have told me that they've lost like £400,000 or dollar deals because they sabotaged it. They literally knew what they should and shouldn't say, and they said what they knew they shouldn't say, and they sabotaged the deal. So we can identify and release blocks in marketing, prospecting, and deal flow, but as these release, there is a growing level of discomfort, right? As I said before, if you resolve the delegation thing by hiring somebody and starting to take them through some processes, there will be a growing level of discomfort. You may then end up sick or distracted or taking on an unrelated project. So what I'm trying to say here is that there has to be the inner work and the externals at the same time. Okay, so we can just look at a business and we like take some very mechanical actions towards that business. Like, oh, we want to grow this business this year. We want to double it in size. Here's a blockage in marketing. Here's a blockage in prospecting and deal flow. But it could be that in this example, if you feel an imposter in your space and we release the block in marketing, well, now you've raised your head above the parapet and you might be like, no, I don't want to do this. Get my head down. I'm going to get shot, basically. And what will happen is then you'll end up sick. You might literally be sick, or you'll get distracted, or you'll just take on an unrelated project. You'll be like, well, you're not saying this obviously in your mind, but you're like, well, my business is now growing. Oh, I'll go do this thing. And then you sabotage that growth. Why? Because you feel an imposter in your space, right? And it's not been addressed. So again, external, internal. We can't just address the external plane without addressing the internal plane. So growth is then harder as you embark on a winding path to avoid the issues of discomfort, right? So we want to grow the business, but we feel an imposter in our space. We identify the blockages that we need to release. We release those blockages and then we panic because unknowingly we've actually gone through a lot of pain and discomfort, and we want to avoid that pain and discomfort. So we then begin to sabotage and undo basically all of the good work. So we must do both, okay? And this is why I look at businesses that want to grow very holistically. In other words, I look at everything, including the personnel, especially the owner, because as we've been through with this, it's the internal stuff that's really going to hold you back. I'll end this by saying, I don't know when you're going to watch this video, but if you want to book a call with me, you can definitely do that. I'm pretty good at talking to people and then figuring out where the actual blockage is. So a lot of this was quite ethereal, but if you want a conversation and you want to bring up maybe where you think you might be blocked internally, that's certainly something that we can look at. Or we could look at the business, again, very mechanically and look at where the blockage is and then figure out how you'd actually be able to go through that and see it through without getting into a place where that triggers something internally for you, right? So again, going back to the very beginning here. So again, this is why I'm not setting goals for the new year. I'm not going to put myself under a lot of pressure to solve this thing, or grow to this extent. If in doing that, I'm then just going to run into a brick wall, which is that internally, I can't handle that thing, right? Better not to set the lofty goals. Think about the past year. Focus on where you think you might be blocked. Have a call with me if you wish. I can probably help you with that. And then use the downtime to actually start maybe just scheduling this work, right? I'll do follow-up videos to this one. This one is just to kind of scope out and make the argument for this case. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up, and hopefully you'll be able to take this period of time now to truly slow down in order to speed up. Think about what you want next year. Think about what could potentially hold you up. Don't set yourself unrealistic goals, and maybe follow the prescriptions in the coming videos. All right, I will catch you in the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye.